Hi, welcome back to the workshop for episode 25 of the Rickenbacker 620/12 string build. We got the top stuck onto the body and trimmed up in the last episode, and this time we'll do some jobs on the back of the guitar that will get that closer to its finished state, and we'll also see if we can get those pickups installed. And if you remember back to the last episode, we got the top glued on, we got it all trimmed down, we got it trimmed to the control cavity, etc. So that's all kind of moving along quite nicely. So in this episode, I'm going to turn my attention to the back of the guitar because there is still quite a lot of work that needs doing here. It's kind of picked up quite a lot of gunk and nastiness, a lot of glue and stuff on the back. It needs a little bit of finessing. I also want to put a round over on. And it's also kind of just dawned on me as well that actually on the drawing it shows some belly cuts. Now historically I haven't really been a big fan of belly cuts. However, these days I actually have got a bit of a belly, so appreciate them a little bit more. So I'm actually going to put those in as well. So that's a bit more work to be done on the back. And once that's completed, we can get this turned over. And I need to address the routes for the pickups and also making sure that I can connect those up to the two little channels that feed the wires into the control cavity. Additional to that, we also need to do the route for the binding. So there's quite a lot of little jobs to get done in this episode. So without further ado, we'll get cracking on with them. And the first thing I'm going to do is just get this back face both cleaned up and leveled up. There's a little tiny bit of inconsistency from where it was glued together, and there's a lot of crap and glue on there. And I'm not going to complicate this. I'm simply going to take random orbital sander with a 60 grit pad on, a very rough pad. We'll use that to knock the worst of this off, and then we'll go to something a little bit finer just to finesse that up. Okay, so that's all beautifully cleaned up now. I sanded that to 180, so it's nice and flat and it's nice and smooth, and all the joints are looking really quite nice. So that's all good. So the next thing we want to do is to just mark up for these belly cuts. And to be honest, they don't actually look that big. It's more of a kind of a slight relief. So just looking at them, they seem to be running kind of like that, and then just kind of tapering off, something like that. I'm not going to get super precise on these. I think that kind of works. It's very similar to what's on the drawing. And then to do the bit on the face, I'm just going to mark a line, say that's about 8mm. And I'm not going to get too fancy on these. And just for a change, I'm not going to use a shinto. I'm going to use a saw. I'm going to use a chisel. And we'll do this the old-fashioned way. And all I'm going to do, and you might have seen this done before by myself and other people, is I'm just going to cut at an angle down to that line and then bring the saw back to that line. So I've created a straight line between those 2 points. And I'm going to continue to do that right the way through there. And then when I've cut those curves all the way along there, just a case of taking my chisel and chopping the waste out. And what happens is these little cuts stop the wood from splitting further than you want it to, so you don't get tear out and chunks of your wood going AWOL. Just have to be a little bit careful when you get down to the bottom, and I'm starting to go against the grain there, so I'll have to turn around and cut from the opposite direction. Okay, so that's got virtually all of that out, and it's actually made a really nice job of it, but it's not kind of perfect. There are a couple of little lumps and bumps. So the next stage is I'm just going to take one of these little carving files and just finesse that. Get all those little saw marks out. And make it all nice and smooth. And just give that a quick whiz with a bit of 60 grit on a block. So that's the first one roughed out. I think that's looking okay. Still needs a little bit of cleaning up, but I think generally speaking, that's good. So now we'll move on to the next one, but just for the sake of interest, I'm going to do this one slightly differently, and I'm going to see if we can use a spoke shave. I think the idea here is just to see if one method is better than the other. Okay, so there's the second one done. A little bit of finish sanding to do on there, but other than that, where it needs to be. I am going to go with the spoke shave as my favourite way of doing that. It was actually much quicker. Got that lot out in about the same amount of time it took to cut the saw cuts on the other one. If I was to do these again, given the choice, I'd use the spoke shave. I thought that was a much better tool. Okay, so with that done, we can now move on and get the rest of the round over put onto this. And nothing complicated here, just going to take the small router with a small round over bit in and just work my way around. I won't be able to get into all of these sections here, but it will be a very straightforward task just to kind of finish that round over off with a chisel and some sandpaper, I would have thought. Okay, so that's the round over put on. I'm really happy with the way that's come out. It will take a little bit of kind of final fine sanding to get it exactly where we want it, but actually really like the way that the back of this is starting to look. And having accomplished that, we can get this turned over and have a look at those pickups. because after the last episode, a few people pointed out that there was potentially a flaw in my plan for fitting these pickups, and I have to admit they're perfectly correct. At least a couple of people who actually own Rickenbackers pointed out to me that their pickups are just surface mounted, sat on a little foam pad. Now I've done a little bit of investigating, and these pickups as they stand with a foam pad under them should be absolutely spot on in terms of height. There might be a little bit of adjustment here and there, but generally they're very much within the ballpark of what we need. So that is what I'm going to go with. Now I haven't got the foam pads, I've got a couple on order and they should be with us in a few days, so we can't actually get these pickups final fitted. Now once it became obvious that this was the case, I've actually done a little bit of research online and I've watched a couple of YouTube videos and things of other people fitting or changing pickups on Rickenbackers, and all there is a very small route underneath them that accommodates the pole pieces on the actual Rickenbacker pickups. We haven't got those, but I still want to put a little bit of a route in there because you never know what might happen in the future. But also having a route in there will actually make it easier for me to drill through into these little channels that I've put in to facilitate the wiring. So what I want to achieve now basically is to just get these two routes done and drill the holes through into the wiring channels so I know I can get my pickup wires into the control cavity, and then we'll just have to wait for the rest of the stuff to arrive until we can kind of take this any further forward. And to do that, I've just knocked up a very quick little template to sit on here, and I'm going to literally just route down about 6mm there. Because it's such a small route, I don't even think there's any need to hog out any of the material. We can just kind of go through in 2 passes and take that out. So as always, a bit of super glue and masking tape, get this stuck down and get it routed. Okay, and there's the pickups kind of in position. I think I need to just tweak these routes a little bit just to move them a little bit further down because the wires are kind of fouling the edge of them at the moment and stopping the pickups going exactly where they need to be. Now in terms of height, when I've actually got these sat flat against the top of the guitar, they are just ever so slightly underneath the level of the fretboard. And of course we need to bear in mind that these need frets in, which will lift that level up a tiny little bit as well. And then you've got your action, which will add, you know, a couple of mil maybe. So I think we are actually well within the ballpark that we need for this. So far, so good. So I'm going to just tweak these routes ever so slightly to get the pickups fitting absolutely perfectly, but I'm going to do that off camera. I think we've covered quite enough ground for this episode. So I'll be back in a couple of days' time where I think we'll look at getting this binding sorted out. Until then, smash that like button if you've enjoyed this. Don't forget to subscribe if you haven't already done so, and I'll see you very soon. Thanks a lot for watching. Bye bye.